Good morning, I'm Baboer. I'm QA specialist at Neste. I've been working with several SAP modules. Unfortunately, none of them we have in use at Neste, but still, I found my way in testing. I'll be telling a bit about Neste in brief, a bit about our SAP implementation project, and also I'll try to explain how we got our business case for test automation. And then Rohit will talk about the setup and the ramp up of test automation. Every company needs to have a purpose. And Neste has a strong one. Throughout the human history, every generation has used more resources than the previous one. And Neste believes this can be reversed. And we share this purpose with our customer. Our vision is to create responsible choices every day. By doing so, we can tackle climate change. But also, we can grow our customers' business by enabling them to make responsible choices. The key to Neste's success is turning responsible choices into customer value. And sometimes that's a complicated business, but we try to make the choices as easy as possible. We offer those responsible choices in all kinds of areas. We have renewable fuels for on the road, for at sea, and for in the air. And soon we will be delivering additional solutions like renewable chemicals. Neste IT also needed to transform, and Neste as a whole transformed, and IT contributed to the Neste strategy. We wanted to make sure that the right systems were used in a correct way so that we can benefit the data they generate. This started in 2013 already with laying a foundation for that. Then in 2016, the Beagle project came to life, which is the project that implements the SAP for Neste. That project was called Beagle. It is called Beagle project, and we will be doing that for a long time. If you look at the project has several phases. Started out with a pilot in Rotterdam for finance, because that was a small entity that had everything in it. And as you can see throughout those phases, somewhat in the middle, in last year, we started test automation, simply because we then had enough data to base everything on and to build a business case. The whole business case is built on the OP2 phase. And you can just see some numbers of that phase, just to give an indication of the size of it. So 30 ICT partners were involved, 3,000 plus ship-to customers that needed to be migrated, and so on and so on. There were a lot of challenges. In Neste, we have limited business resources, and that gives a challenge in automating, because you need those business resources for their input. There was a lot of testing work that needed to be done. And it was additional testing work, and that's causing a challenge, because it's not that by automating you save money. You need to spend in addition, but the spend is less. And building a business case around that was our challenge. As said, there was no existing service available. And also we had no data to build a business case on. However, by having a tool set that we use, so the HPALM, we were able to build that business case. Just to go through the setup of the scenarios that we had at Neste. We have an end-to-end scenario, which consists of several standalone scenarios, that consists of steps, and then the test data. And if you look at SAP, that correlates to transaction code, steps or screens and tabs within those transaction codes and fields. The screens we actually used for pricing. So there is a very transparent pricing mechanism. We pay to automate a screen or a tab in SAP, and that's the price. Rohit will show how we actually did that. If you look at the business case, basically what we've done is we've taken all the information from HPALM and then used that to calculate the cost. So there were 99 end-to-end scenarios, which on average consist of 50 scripts. That consists of 6 steps per script. And we found in ALM that every step takes about 104 seconds on average to execute. On top of that, we needed to run those scenarios 1.3 times before they actually pass. That easily helps you calculate the number of full-time equivalents needed for one execution of the whole 99 scenarios. That also means that the more that you run those scenarios, the more the cost, or the higher the cost will be. If you then, on the other side, look at test automation, you just have a fixed cost, which is the run and maintain service. They actually execute those scripts, and if there is changes, they update the scripts so that they continue to work. Then there are content sprints, because we chose to work in an agile way, simply because of the limited resource availability. So there is a fixed service that runs them, and every now and then we have a sprint that delivers content to the service. And then, of course, there is a one-time cost for knowledge transfer while creating those scripts, which is about 20% of one cycle. That you can easily calculate or transfer into cost. And then the outcome is that if you have more than 4 to 6 executions per year, you actually will start to save some money, causing the payback time to be less than a year. At this point, I'm almost about to hand over to Rohit, but I want to thank Lauri Heinonen and Helga Piilila for all the work they've done. Without them, we wouldn't have gotten this far.
Good morning, everyone. I will now explain you how we implemented test automation at Neste. But before that, I would like to give a brief introduction about myself. My name is Rohit Chandra. I have around 12 years of experience in SAP testing as well as SAP consulting. The modules which I have worked on, mostly I have worked on modules like material management, sales and distribution, and I have some high-level understanding of modules like FI and CO. And currently at Neste, I am leading this automation service. So let's get started. But thanks, Wout, for explaining the business case and also the data points which you considered to come up with the business case. And the couple of data points which Wout mentioned, he noticed that in every execution cycle, the number of functional testing experts as well as the number of resources were getting increased. And at the same time, we didn't have those resources. We had challenges in getting those resources. So this was kind of ideal case to introduce a test automation service at Neste. We follow agile way of working in this project, and we started with sprint 1 or sprint 0. We called it as sprint 0. Mostly sprint 0 was to establish our test automation service. It's kind of prerequisites. If you have overcome all these things, then you are ready to start your automation service. So the points or the milestones which we covered in sprint 0 were set up initial test automation framework, test automation dashboard, define content of sprints as backlog. I will come back to these points one by one. Minimum viable product, and the last one is define ways of working. So when we say test automation framework, it's kind of backbone of your automation script, or it's backbone of your automation process. So in test automation framework, you need to define how your script will look like, how you will use the data in your scripts, how your test execution result will look like, how many screenshots you want to take. So means those kind of technical things you need to define in your automation framework. And also one of the important point is how you will reuse those scripts. So those kind of things you need to define in your test automation framework. So next comes test automation dashboard. Yeah, test automation dashboard is something that you can customize according to your requirement. Some people want to see how many defects we have identified in that particular sprint. Some people want to see how many executions we have done in last couple of days. So those kind of things, what we did was generally we did a brainstorming sessions before coming up with the dashboard, that these are the things which we want to look into. So that we completed in sprint 0. Next comes define content of sprints as backlog. Yes, this is one of the important things which we did in sprint 0. What we did was we went inside HP ALM, and then we analyzed the test cases and test scenarios. And then we recorded those scenarios in the form of backlog of items which we can automate in the coming sprints. So that activity we keep on doing in the subsequent sprints also. The next is minimum viable product. Yeah, so what is minimum viable product? In minimum viable product, what we do is we selected one of the small scenarios for automation, and then we scripted that scenario, and then we executed that scenario. That scenario was just to verify that the test automation framework which we have created is working as per our design. Test automation dashboard which we have created, it is giving the subsequent data. So those kind of things were defined to say that, okay, we have come up with a minimum viable product for this sprint 0 from where we can start. And the next is the defined ways of working. This is a very important thing, especially in terms of when you are having agile projects, because things can change very dynamically in your agile projects. So before starting, you need to define how you will communicate to your development team, how you will communicate to your business process teams. So those kind of things you need to think beforehand before starting. So these are some of the points which we completed in sprint 0. And these are kind of prerequisites to start or kickstart your project. So these things we covered in sprint 0. Yeah, so the next comes how we implemented it at Neste. As you can see at the bottom of your screen, I have mentioned the test phases generally which we have in our projects. And at Neste also, we followed the same way of working. So the first is the identification phase, next comes the evaluation phase, then the automation phase, and then next is run and maintain service, or you can say execution and reporting. So we also followed the same way of working, but we did it differently according to the Neste requirement. I would like to give you a brief example or a practical example of it. Everyone mostly drives a car, and in winter season we use different tires. In summer we use different tires. Why we use different tire in winter? Because the weather condition and the environment condition is different. So we need to have tires which has a proper grip on the road. Whereas in the summer we have a very different kind of setup. So we use the traditional tire. But the tire which we are using is still the same. It is still a circle. It's still round. We are not changing it, but we are changing it according to our requirement. Similarly at Neste, what we have done, we are using the same thing, but we are using it according to our requirement. And these things are self-explanatory, that what you do in these phases. So we are not reinventing the wheel. We are using the same wheel, but according to our requirement. This is one of the important things which we constantly do in our project. It says about how you identify the scenarios for automation. And I strongly believe that only automation is not important, but what you are automating is important. If you have automated the whole set of things, and at the end of the day, you come to know that none of them are business critical or none of them are used in testing, then there is no point of doing automation. So you need to spend some time in identifying what all scenarios you want to automate. So here you can see that what we have done, that we went inside HP ALM, and then we took the list of scenarios from the last execution cycle. As you can see, we have listed down all the scenarios from the last execution cycle, and we divided those scenarios in the form of T-codes. Then we identified those T-codes were how many times used in these scenarios. When we identified that thing, then we come up with the reusability factor, that okay, this particular T-code, creation of contract, is being used 16 times out of 21 in these scenarios. So from automation point of view, everything revolves around reusability. So if you automate it once, then you can reuse that component in 16 other scenarios. So this is the priority which we defined to select the test case. Not only this, this is the only thing which we have done from automation side. After this, we went to the solution managers or the business people to understand from them that this is the analysis which we have done, and based upon this analysis, whether these scenarios are important to you or also or not. If they say that, okay, these are also business critical to them and they also do frequent testing using these scenarios, then we get an approval that, okay, from automation point of view, we have a high priority, and from business point of view, these scenarios are also important. So these are good to automate. Yes, so in this one, I have showed how we calculated the reusability factor to define the priority. And I have already talked about that. If you take an example of a creation of contract, then out of 21 scenarios, we have been using it 16 times. So in percentage terms, it is coming around 76%. So in automation, if you are getting a reusability factor of 76%, then it is excellent. So those kind of analysis we need to do, but definitely you need to get approval from business people that yes, These are important processes which we need to automate. Then only you can proceed or you can prioritize. Yes, so here, what's the current status and road ahead? As you can see, I have highlighted the second month of this 2019, and we are currently in sprint 2. And what we have already completed one sprint 1. And in sprint 1, we have already automated around 21 to 22 scenarios. And currently, in the same manner, we have identified scenarios for sprint 2, and we are in process of automating those scenarios. As you can see, from Beagle OP2, from Beagle OP3, we are still analyzing the scenarios that we can take for automation. And once those things are done, then we take those scenarios based upon the priority which I talked about earlier, and then we take those as a sprint content, and then we continue with our automation. And we will continue doing the same thing in the coming days also. Yes, this one is a sprint 1 data. As I talked about, we have already completed sprint 1. And in sprint 1, these are the data directly coming from sprint 1, and these are the actual efforts and the data which you are seeing. So in sprint 1, we completed 21 transactions. Out of 21 transactions, we identified that there were exactly 143 screens. And if we calculate how much effort we put in automating 21 scenarios or transactions or 143 screens, then it was coming around 360 hours. When I say 360 hours, it consists of all the hours by the automation team, all the hours spent by business team, all the hours spent by the SMEs. So everything, holistic hours we are calculating, so that actually you will come up with the exact number of hours, how much you have put your efforts. So the actual outcome was coming as around 6.8, which validates the Wout's point, which he mentioned that in the business case, he also mentioned that it was around 6 per steps. So here also in the content sprint also, we have validated with the actual data set. So it is evident that going ahead, we will get the payback time as it was expected in the business case. Okay, so what all are the automation best practices? And these are the best practices means that we have identified from our practical experience from sprint 0 and sprint 1. There are so many best practices, but one of the important or couple of important points are like reusability of scripts, data parameterization, and shared use between projects. When I say reusability of scripts, automation revolves around reusability. The more reusability you have, the more successful your project will be. So what we have done when we were defining the automation framework, at that time we developed a framework in such a manner that all our scripts which we are creating is modular. And when you have a modular scripts, then it helps a lot when you are having a different projects also in the team. Like when you are having automation project, then simultaneously sometimes we have a need to do performance testing also. And performance testing team can use your automated script which we have already created for their data creation. So if your scripts are modular, then they can directly use your script to create the data, and then they can definitely put the load and everything. So it helps a lot, and it saves a lot of effort and time. So we have created scripts in modular way. Next comes the data parameterization. Yeah, so this is one of the important points when you are automating SAP processes. In SAP screen, I think you would have noticed that there are some mandatory fields, there are some non-mandatory fields. So mandatory fields, as is self-evident that you need to capture all the mandatory fields. What we have done, along with mandatory fields, we have also captured the non-mandatory fields, so that when in future, if any flow changes or if any process changes, then at that time we have those non-mandatory fields also recorded. We don't to change our script. Simply we can use our script, and through the Excel file we can pass the data in those fields. So it helps a lot. And the next is shared use between projects. Yes, in Neste environment, it's not only SAP project. There are so many projects which are going on, and you need to have collaboration between those projects. As I said, means it could be your performance testing team, it could be your security team, it could be some other projects. So for what you are automating, it could be that your output is input for their scripts. So you need to create those generic components so that they can be utilized by other teams also, so that you need to have a collaboration. Yeah, benefits of automation means there are so many benefits of automation, but some couple of things I have mentioned over here is like maintenance. I have put this point based upon the analysis which we did, like for reusability factor. We calculated that for our entire scenario, our reusability factor was coming around 45%, which is amazing. Means in hardly you will get a reusability factor of around 25 to 30%. So if we are getting a reusability factor of 45, then at that time you can simply imagine what is the maintenance at that time. Means you maintain it at one place and it will be updated everywhere. So it is very huge benefit at that time. And if you are having that kind of maintenance benefits, then it definitely saves time, it saves cost. Everything is, if you do it once very clearly, then everything will be self-evident. Yeah. So I would like to conclude this, that automation is definitely no longer a luxury, and you have to keep up with the pace of the world to implement the automation.